1 in 10 Americans are on antidepressants.
$18 billion worth of Paxil and Wellbutrin alone.
Every drug in that market did over $1 billion. Prozac, Paxil,
a mix of psychiatry, and we now have a kind of full-blown psychiatric pharmaceutical industrial complex, and certainly it's in their interest to have more people depressed.
In the late 1900s, a new class of drug for depression was introduced, claiming to fix low levels of serotonin in the brain, otherwise known as the chemical imbalance theory of depression. And they proved to be a huge success for Big Pharma, generating billions in sales. However, what if depression isn't caused by a chemical imbalance after all?
For more than half a century, doctors believe that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Antidepressants to help the chemical imbalance that was believed to be the cause of the disorder up until recently.
So this newspaper summarizes that there is in fact no hard evidence to support that depression is caused by a disturbance of the brain's serotonin.
So what's going on with depression? After all, antidepressants do help some people, but what if it's not how we think? What if there's a hidden cause of depression most of us are completely unaware of that might explain this mystery? And if we understood it, we could support our brain to naturally fight it.
Is that inflammation is a primary driver of depression.
inflammation in the brain. And what we did is we looked at people who had clinical depression and found that on average they had a 30% rise in inflammation in their brain as compared to people in the midst of health.
The inflammation could actually be directly causing the depression.
So what exactly is inflammation in the brain and what causes it? To find the answers, our journey doesn't begin in the brain, but in the gut instead. This is the story of the hidden cause of depression. Before we uncover the link between gut and depression, we first need to look at where the chemical imbalance theory of depression came from. In 1953, a compound called reserpine was isolated from a plant that had been traditionally used in India for treating insomnia and insanity. Researchers discovered that it lowered levels of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine in the brain, and when given to animals, symptoms of depression were observed, and the low or imbalanced level of serotonin was assumed to be the cause of the depressed state, and hence the chemical imbalance theory was born. However, it was only a theory, and there were many critics. And in 2022, a group of researchers, led by Joanna Moncrieff, Professor of Psychiatry at the University College London, conducted the most comprehensive study ever to look at this theory. You could call this the gold standard of psychological research. And the results were rather disturbing. Professor Moncrieff stated, no consistent evidence of there being an association between serotonin and depression, and no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lowered serotonin activity. Many people take antidepressants because they've been led to believe that depression has a biochemical cause, but this new research suggests this belief is not grounded in evidence. And Dr. Elliot Ballenstein, professor of psychology and neuroscience at Michigan University, further supports these findings in his book, Blaming the Brain. He explains that even though a depressed state is observed in animals when these compounds are lowered, the same thing is not observed in humans. And although some depressed people do have low levels of serotonin and norepinephrine, most do not. Some even have high levels. He also points out that antidepressants usually raise levels of serotonin in the brain quickly, within 1 or 2 days, but the effect patients experience isn't for weeks afterwards, which he believes is because these drugs are doing something else, which is an important piece of this mystery, which we'll discuss in a moment. You see, it can't be denied that antidepressant drugs do work for some people, although with significant side effect risk. But if not a chemical imbalance in the brain causing depression, what is? Depression is a multifaceted issue. Emotional trauma, stressful life events come into play, but for the scope of this video, we'll focus on inflammation in the brain. And to do this, we need to look at the gut-brain connection. A large amount of our immune system is found in our gut, and inflammation is the immune system responding to something it detects isn't right, such as toxins or bacteria. As part of this response, compounds called cytokines are released and can make their way from the gut to the brain, where they activate special cells called microglials, which create brain inflammation. In this inflamed state, brain function is compromised and symptoms of depression are the result. This link between depression and inflammation was confirmed in 1970 when a substance called interferon was used to treat hepatitis and caused an increase in these same inflammatory cytokines. And not surprisingly, 1/4 of patients experienced severe depression as a result. One study concluded, recent data suggests that inflammation and the release of inflammatory cytokines may be involved in the pathogenesis of neuropsychiatric disorders, including major depression. So how does inflammation start in the gut? Well, your gut is a barrier between the inside world and the outside. However, when the lining of the gut gets damaged, harmful compounds can enter the blood, triggering an inflammatory response. This damage comes in the form of tiny holes in the lining of the digestive tract, known as leaky gut. Gluten, a protein found mainly in wheat, is one of the main causes. It's the gliadin protein in gluten which creates holes in our gut lining. And this happens to everyone, not just people with celiac disease. A study from Harvard concluded that this study demonstrates that gliadin exposure induces an increase in intestinal permeability in all individuals, regardless of whether or not they have celiac disease. The good news is the body can heal these holes, but if it happens repeatedly, we can end up with a gut lining that resembles a kitchen sieve, and all sorts of stuff can get into the bloodstream that normally wouldn't, such as bad bacteria. You see, living inside the gut are millions of bacteria that are collectively called the gut microbiome. These bacteria serve important roles, such as helping us digest food. However, there's also bad bacteria. These bad guys contain a compound called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS, which not only triggers an inflammatory response, but can cause leaky gut too.
And then the bad bacteria can rear their ugly head. They produce LPS, which is one of the two most powerful triggers in creating intestinal permeability.
When LPS leaks into the blood, it can make its way to the brain and trigger inflammation there, which we discussed can cause symptoms of depression. However, this is only the start of the problem. A nasty feedback loop is also created in the brain, making the situation even worse.
However, if you want to learn to fight conditions like depression, and also diabetes, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune conditions, and obesity, then get free instant access to the Longevity Code documentary series, featuring dozens of doctors and health experts from around the world, packaged into 7 episodes of exclusive video footage. Plus, you'll also get digital copies of The Art of Sleep and The Obese Brain books. Just click the link in the description below.
The brain is connected to our gut through a series of nerve pathways. The main one is called the vagus nerve. Think of it like a highway of information between the gut and the brain, controlling things like digestion. Which is why we have the saying, butterflies in the stomach, as the brain and the gut are connected. However, when the brain is inflamed, this information highway is compromised, and as a result, the gut gets out of balance. When this happens, bad bacteria in the gut thrive, which leads to more of them getting into the bloodstream and once again making their way to the brain, causing inflammation, and around we go. And so we get caught in a vicious cycle of inflammation, making depression even worse. So what can we do about it? Well, removing foods that contain gluten can help, as it causes leaky gut. Also, eating collagen-rich foods, as collagen plays an important role in strengthening gut lining. The body also needs vitamin C to make collagen, so eating vitamin C-rich foods is a good idea. Taking probiotics can also help balance out gut bacteria and reduce levels of bad bacteria. And interestingly, research has shown can also improve mood. One study concluded that multi-species probiotics may be used as a potential preventive strategy for depression. And another study reached similar conclusions, stating our data implied that an add-on of probiotic treatment ameliorates depression symptoms, along with changes in the gut microbiota and brain. So by introducing good bacteria into our gut, we can help rebalance things and reduce the overgrowth of harmful bacteria causing inflammation. But now back to the question about antidepressants. Antidepressants such as SSRIs have been shown to reduce inflammation-causing cytokines, which might explain why some people experience beneficial effects while taking them, and may have nothing to do with a chemical imbalance after all. However, a leaky gut is not the only problem. There's other things that can cause brain inflammation we need to be careful of too.
Feeling a little blue? Find out why it could be what you're putting in your mouth. A connection between diet and depression.
The right diet may help prevent depression in some people, but could a poor diet really lead to depression?
It should come as no surprise that the standard Western diet today not only drives obesity, it also creates significant inflammation in the body, which could lead to depression in the brain. Foods that cause the hormone insulin to be constantly elevated create inflammation. The worst foods are highly processed ones containing added sugar and processed flour, chips, soda, bread, pasta, cakes, candy, to name a few. But there's one group of foods that is probably the worst of all that we really need to watch out for, as it hides in many foods: vegetable oils. These oils are made from polyunsaturated fatty acids, and they come from canola, soy, sunflower oils. But why are they bad for us? I mean, they come from natural ingredients, right? Well, yes, but there's a problem. These oils can become damaged easily by light, heat, and oxygen. This process is called oxidation. The reason this happens is the chemical structure in these oils is unstable. And during processing, packaging, and storage, these oils are constantly getting oxidized. It's in this damaged state that the body doesn't recognize them as food and launches an immune response when we eat them, and inflammation is the result. Removing these foods can go a long way in helping reduce inflammation and have a positive effect on mood and depression. But not only does removing bad foods help, many of us are lacking important nutrients too. Research shows that people with depression are often deficient in folate, vitamin B6, and B12, plus omega-3. Listen to Dr. Andrew Huberman explain the importance of omega-3.
When people ingest a certain level of EPA omega-3 fatty acids, the relief from depressive symptoms matches the SSRIs.
Which is why it's important to ensure your diet includes good sources of omegas, such as nuts and fish. And also a lack of zinc can play a role. One study found that zinc levels were significantly lower in major depressed subjects. And another stated that consumption of mainly dietary sources of zinc, such as red meats and chicken, should be encouraged in young, depressed girls. Other food sources include legumes, pumpkin seeds, and almonds. Magnesium may also play a role, as most of us are low in it. One study concluded that taking magnesium leads to a significant decrease in depression and anxiety symptoms regardless of age, gender, or baseline severity of depression. However, if you're taking medication, you need to talk to your doctor about the treatment that is best for you before stopping them. The truth is, there are many foods and lifestyle adjustments that may help support the body to reduce chronic inflammation, which may have a positive effect on reducing symptoms of depression. Although new research suggests that depression is not caused by a simple chemical imbalance in the brain, depression is still a very real and at times debilitating disease, and a multifaceted condition where emotional trauma, societal pressures to suppress our feelings, stressful life events, faulty beliefs from childhood all play a role. But hopefully, as we learn more about this horrible condition, we can help develop more tools to help support our body to combat it.
When it comes to health, one of the most important things we need to get right is our sleep. However, in our modern culture, a huge number of people struggle with this. And although it might seem harmless, in reality, the consequences are much more serious than most people understand. To learn the dangers of sleep deprivation and proven methods and special foods that can help you restore sleep, click the image on the screen to watch our video, Stolen Sleep, now.